Hey guys, so this is my opinion about Seahenge after reading it, and there are certain hints and other wording in the write-up that whoever wrote it, they definitely seem to be dropping hints in about certain things that I find apparent, but if they're kind of going along with the theory, the main theory of what they're putting forward, then I'm kind of gonna put an opposing opinion across. And this is based on, unfortunately, facts and evidence. What I've been investigating for our area and our hill fort and ancient sites, and there is evidence of them being attacked and rubbished, and almost ceremonially vandalised. Really, we've got an ancient mound which is like a hill fort, and its shape and direction are very similar to Oswestry, as if it's sort of like a little bit of a smaller copy. Might have been bigger. That's had a, and it's also like a Liberty Cap shape, and it's actually had a letter D housing estate put on the top of it. Just happens to be where they implanted the chemical Imperial Chemical Industries factory. And then I've had to look into the tower put on the hill fort at Castle Hill, Victoria Tower. There's some history and issues between the Liberal Party and the parliamentarians and the Royalists in that. And then there's the history of the Brigantes tribe. You've also got to take into account that the area here in the Pennines, where that Brigantes area was, is kind of high up and hilly. And this Norfolk area now, Sandringham area, which is known to be really flat, wasn't actually very populated in this prehistoric period. Not as much as the other areas like Wales and the South Coast and Scotland. So, although this is about Seahenge, but I need to note that at this stage, I've got evidence of creative and artistic use of vandalism and attack symbolically on ancient sites and heritage, and that is, I'd go to court with that evidence. I'm serious enough to. It's not, if you watch Russell Brand now, Russell Brand's having to, on his channel, put across a lot of hard-edged theories, and he's been criticised for it. But he's having to fight for the free speech. Everything that, all the investigations that I've done, it's serious evidence, that I would use in court, to prove it. Attack on heritage. And there are other examples as well. Like when they used the excuse for the war, tanks to bez around over like Sisbury Ring Hill Fort and on Dartford and certain ancient sites. I'm not saying that they didn't need to do tank training, but it seems to me like they've conveniently targeted certain sites that can be rubbished. So this is the Prehistoric Britain Map, and this is when, before we had patents in the 16 and 1700s for land irrigation. There were lots of patents for land irrigation. So land irrigation was actually an invention and patent they made money out of it, and they removed a lot of water from a lot of land and a lot of farming land in England through these patents. Now we've got drainage, we've got underground, sewerage systems that take water away. The canals removed a lot of water from the rivers. The amount of water that flowed through the rivers. A lot of the fords, wouldn't be as rocky. You could get boats over them. Obviously not both directions, usually with the flow of the current, but there's been a lot of water removed from the rivers that it would have held. So water's been removed. Now this map shows, it's not just water from the prehistoric era. We've got serious water reduction due to humans. Now, you see, over this side of England, right? This is the area we're talking about, North Norfolk, and on this prehistoric map, he's got a lot of water out here, and I think that this accounts for not just the melting of the ice caps and water that's left over. I think this is borehole testing and finding where water's been, right? So this is also to do with, when they changed the drainage. When you go out over this part of the country, and Lincolnshire as well, there are just channels everywhere. The water's been removed from all over the place. Because obviously it would, when it rained, it flows from the higher points to the low points from all around the land and goes through the soil. So, I mean, King's Lynn itself is, never mind the term Sandringham, we're talking about half underwater anyway, so this place does not have really that much of a history in terms of prehistory other than water, although, when, on some of the websites you go back to Doggerland when, the country was joined all the way across to the continent. So there's still a lot of water around here. Now they're saying that the Seahenge area was salt marshes, but you really have got a lot of water. I mean, look at London's got water both sides. The Celts, before the Roman invasion, it wasn't really major occupation around London, because in prehistory it wasn't really an occupiable place, really. The river kind of made it less desirable, not more desirable to be occupied. Now, the thing with this is that, so we've and it's flat out here as well. This area here is flat, and there are not really many mountains. And the thing with the prehistory is that they're known to have liked, Snowdonia and Wales, and the Pennines here in West Yorkshire, Lake District and Scotland, because they're high up. I mean, even the Cotswolds, it's like a cot, small hills, not big hills, like Marsden, Morden, big, Cots, small, isn't it? But you've still got some sort of hills, and then you've got like Dartmoor, and a lot of the occupation was on the south coast. So the east is not really that associated with that much occupation. So even if you get Druid sites and or any sort of religious or ceremonial monuments, there are less. I'm not saying there aren't any, but generally there's less over this side of the country, So that's that. And then we actually get this, Oxford professor has done this. This is the map of the hill forts, okay? So he's put on every single hill fort, right? And you can see that Wales has got a lot of them. I mean, Ireland has got quite a lot. They seem generally evenly sort of distributed across Ireland. Wales has got a lot. South Wales, Devon and Cornwall, the south coast, particularly around, Maiden Castle, Dorchester area. And then, the middle of the country is actually not too bad, but there aren't loads and loads in the middle, and particularly here in Lincolnshire, there are few sites. There aren't many in Lincolnshire. It's flat, okay. And here, I mean, there are some, but it's not particularly lower down, there, but up here, it's extremely sparse in hill forts, okay, and Lincolnshire, So and that suggests to me, a route for, if we did, fight the Romans off multiple times and they failed to come across, it took them quite a few years, many years to get over to England. It wouldn't make sense for them to attack on the bottom coast. Some people say now that it was less of an invasion, more of a corporate takeover, but they did try once and fail. So they definitely were trying. So if we're to believe that Gallic Wars, what would you do if you wanted to try and come over to here? Well, the story that they tell, the Romans, in the Gallic Wars, if you're going to believe it, is that they came over and they went to Colchester and they took hostage of the leader, Colchester, so we're told. And they came up to the Brigantes, which was meant to be one of the major tribes in West Yorkshire, and then that's when all the negotiating happened and to take over, because they wanted to remove the Druids, because the Druids had religious power and spiritual power, and they were the kind of leaders of the whole tribes. They reckon all this warring tribes is just like, tiffs, really. It's not the full truth of it, and there were reasons why higher ground was more appealing, and there were reasons to go into that symbolically, for central places and bases and headquarters. You see, all of the massive hill forts and massive occupation on the bottom, it would have been difficult for them to come in this way. So it does support the strategy of the Gaelic Wars for them to come this way, if it is true, because they would have a lot less opposition, and with an armed force, they could have fought the way through, and particularly if you've got a hostage, symbolically. So that leaves us that, even though this distance is shorter to the continent, it was a lot more going on along here. And the thing is, there are big river routes like this, Humber, which is from our area where our hill forts sail to the Humber and out. The thing is, if you've got a culture that goes round the coast, and is really happy about sailing around the coast and travelling around the coast, delivering flint from Worthing, when you're delivering flint from Worthing and knocking out of those hill forts, and you get used to travelling around the coast, so you're travelling on water, travelling. You just get used to travelling on water, right? Travelling. So it makes sense that you're travelling in a little hop like that. That little distance there is not really much of a challenge or significant when you're doing a lot of travelling around the coast, because it's like, okay, I'm going sideways, but I'm on water. So with all these, historic and ancient sites to do with Karnak and all that, so with all the ancient sites to do with Karnak and the Scilly Isles and all this, them important sites here, which align perfectly with all these that Howard Crowhurst has done, it doesn't matter whether you're that distance there or this distance here, because when you're used to bezzing around the coastline and travelling distances on water, then it's not much difference to go than if you're going it's they're used to it. So, why isn't this absolutely, hill forted out to the max if it's closer here? Well, the distance wasn't important. It was the land and the resources and what they've got there and the landscape, and actually going to, this side, the flat area, to them wasn't really as much use or desirable. And then at a later stage, I think that's when, Vikings turn up and come over. So when we start looking at this area here for Seahenge, it's not the greatest or most significant area for the Celts and prehistory before conquest. And the thing is, I think there was that Iceni village in Suffolk whoever was behind setting the Seahenge village up. It ended up closing down. It wasn't very successful. It's a really rubbish place to put an Seahenge village because Norfolk, not being really prominent with Celtic heritage for the reasons I've said, is not really a good place to put an Seahenge village, really, particularly if you're not going to make an effort on it. And when I actually went past it one time, I've never been to it, and it wasn't the easiest place to find, and promote. It's not, it doesn't get the coverage of Stonehenge, let's say that, or it doesn't get the coverage. To be honest, a lot of the sites didn't get very much coverage because when I was travelling around a lot and I would have had opportunity to go to a lot of these sites, there wasn't the information on the internet. It's only since Facebook, really, when more and more websites have started throwing information up and people have started throwing photos up and you find out about them all. So all these Orkney Islands amazing sites get coverage, and the recumbent circles. You don't hear that. You didn't used to hear so much about all the cairns in Scotland or the Scilly Isles cairns, or even all of the Welsh ones. Even the Anglesey ones have only become in the last 10 years more wider publicised. And you wouldn't go to Ireland back then because all the IRA and people were scared of going to Northern Ireland, so you wouldn't go to see all the sites and learn about them. There are reasons. So, ancient sites, and particularly Druid sites out this way, I'm not saying there weren't ever any prehistoric priests or prehistoric religious ceremonies out this way, but less. So, on that note, right, I am automatically dubious about this Seahenge place. And then, secondly, it's near King's Lynn. It's near Sandringham, and it's close to where Philip's knocking around in his 4x4, right? And it suddenly magically appears, on the beach, and then mysteriously, it gets pulled up, and taken away. So I'm just instantly suspicious about it. And now, from what I've learned about our area, and our area was an important centre of the Brigantes, because it's important to note this, because we've got 3 huge hill forts, and 2 of them aren't acknowledged for being even significant or anything at all. Only one is, when there's 3 sites there, and we've got the Pennine Hills. And when you figure all the issues with our area into this, and have evidence that it's had significant imperial interest and I would say actual vandalism against some of the sites, then, I start thinking Neil Buchanan, art attack, shapes and letters, symbolic meaning is being put into it. So why don't you start finding strange upturned trees with ceremonial wood things round that are in a very unusual place? That this area in prehistoric times was a lot of water anyway. I'm not saying the salt marsh, you could or couldn't walk on it very well or not, but it's not. I don't think that they were that bothered about knocking around here. I know that even going back further, I know that it was attached to, we've got the Doggerland groups, and they're saying, it was all attached anyway. That's going really, really far back. But I'm more interested now, since I've been doing some research on the Gun District Cauldron, is the Gun District Cauldron authentic or not? There's certain imagery on it which correlate to things that were happening around that time in the late 1800s when it was found. Like, they're all holding on to the line there, and that's when they've invented the telephone and fit the telephone lines into the police chief's house. And then Mountbatten's come over, and we get the Victoria Tower mounted on top of the hill. When they put that baton in the Heights of Abraham, the baton tower as well. And then this almost looks like, like a hill fort type thing. It's as if that, Sir William Ramsden's getting his head bashed on, the hill fort here, the warrior's tomb. I'm not saying this, but apparently now they're saying that you can't carbon date metal. I was speaking to somebody and saying, you can't actually carbon date metal. It's only the things that stuck to it, or the dirt or grime or this or that. not the actual metal itself. Or you can find out where it came from by chemical analysis, but you could melt down or find some metal from anywhere that was from a certain place, you know. But I'm not. This conversation is not disputing that Gun District Cauldron's authenticity, but what I'm saying is I'm suspicious about the authenticity of it because of certain events and things happening at the time when you look in history around it, you know, that have. It's an ideological investigation, you know, on what the reasons might be. You've got to know the history. You've got to know the history between the parliamentarians and the Roundheads. Our area supported the parliamentarians, so it was opposed to the royals, you know. And then William Ramsden ended up getting his land sort of taken off him. He was kind of forced to sell out, and then we get all this imperial stuff put on us when it used to be a main centre. And really, all the high areas, the hilly areas, the mountainous areas, Dartmoor, here, Scotland, Wicklow Hills and Ireland, that's the areas where they're more preferred, not flat areas. So when you got Sandringham dumped here, they haven't really got history there, you know. So I think might be some sourness about history and all that, and then particularly, you know, when the Romans were meant to have pulled up all the ancient oak trees and oak groves of the Druids and that. It's strange that it's an oak circle with a tree that's been ripped out and tipped upside down. You know, I question whether or not that site, you know, was planted there or not, and whether they got chemical ways and means to get around the testing or arrange for certain people to be working or at certain times to do with the testing. It seems, you know, they made a very rushed job about, you know, as soon as it was found, then it was moved so nobody can go and have a proper look at it or check it out. You know, and as for the chemical analysis side, it's not impossible to get materials that are old or are from somewhere else and move them or change them and put them somewhere, you know. And again, I just get that Neil Buchanan heart attack sort of thing, you know. It seems, you know, when he does a picture from above on a beach, it just. And the thing with Liverpool is Liverpool also was a lot. There was a lot on that ancient water map. Liverpool actually had also a lot of water on it. You know, so they didn't have a prehistoric prehistory as such. Although the Wirral's okay, but you know, so there is some similarities between. That Neil Buchanan's meant to be a Scouser, isn't he? So, you know, I mean, you might say that's flimsy evidence. So, you know, the thing with this site is it's set up to all these weird arcane rituals of leaving birds to pick off people's bones and, you know, block it off so you can't see what's happening and pick it off or whatever, you know. It's almost like, you know, the conquered has been left there, you know, for these ravens to come down and pick what's left while they try and best cover it up and not see it. You know, it's kind of I don't think that our ancestors were like that at all. I think that if you worship nature and, you know, you've got all these beautiful, you like trees and growth and plants and stuff. I think that anyone who's into psychedelics and likes Stonehenge and hippies and things, it's all about peace and love. If you go to psychedelics groups, they tend to be quite liberal and open thinking and quite, you know, sort of bohemian and hippie in a way. They're not warlike, so I don't really go for this kind of macabre arts history or macabre religious culture. I think a lot of it was made up, and particularly with the Romans, the mission was to remove the Druids and to get rid of them, you know. And you don't do that by writing, you know, painting a pretty picture of them or telling everyone all the details about them and everything, you know. Now, there are certain things when we go into the oak trees. The Romans said that they used to put a cloth on the floor and then climb up a tree and cut the mistletoe down, you know. But there are some interesting things to know about certain, you know, like we've got most of my research and study at the moment is on the liberty caps, for religious sacrament to do with baptism and things like that. We definitely know that ancient peoples are using things like that because of South America, so, but as for other sacraments, like amanitas and other variations that grow under trees and things like that, that sort of putting a cloth and a cover up, and then it seems to be that it could have almost been the Romans coming to a druid's ancient grove and sawing off their oak trees branches and then ripping it up by its roots and putting it down upside down and then leaving the druid on there to rot, and the birds come pick the flesh off, and then what are those planks doing around it, so if anyone ever goes to see the local druid, then they'll just see this macabre sight, and then they'll end up writing in the history books, oh no, they used to do horrible rituals with animals' innards out and all this rubbish, which is, if you go to any butcher's shop, you'll see quite similar scenes even now in an abattoir, you know what I mean? So it's I kind of said that before, that you've got a culture where it's cold. If it's not like South America where it's hot and sweaty in the jungle when they do the ceremonies outside. In this country, if there were any religious ceremonies, and it was in winter, particularly, it's cold or windy, then you'd all go into the barrows, or into the temples. You wouldn't want to be sitting around outside when it's windy because it's not comfortable to concentrate. Like in South America, it's different because you've got the tree canopies. It's just hot and sweaty, So there's that, and then I think that there's a lot of misinformation, and particularly post-conquest, when it's not their heritage and their culture, and they don't want to big up the ancient culture's magic more than their own magic that's conquered it, or else it don't make you look stylish and cool to be celebrating the big magic of the previous culture that you've dominated. So, what I found with our ancient sites is, it's a massive, huge liberty-capped hill-shaped hill fort, and they've stuck a street on the top of it with a letter D for dunce, even though they bang the Imperial Chemical Industries next to it. And then you've got Tolkien sniffing around trying to find out remnants of languages and information and details, and then you get Mordor, which is like Morden, Big Den, and then you get loads of they aim the crosshair for immigration right on top of us. It's almost like an attack, really, like we've been left on that tree, and there's been a bit of a cover up around it. I'm suspicious about this Seahenge. If it's legitimate, then fair enough. But why arrange them like that and put a tree upside down? If your culture and history venerated, we know that oak trees were venerated and other trees were venerated, and it seems unlikely that they do that unless it were when the Roman army came through. But what were the Roman army doing right up on the coast? Did they get the dates wrong? Is it really only 2,000 years ago when it happened, not 4,000, or is it a more recent 1998 implantation and art attack setup? I am dubious about the authenticity of it because of where it is as well. And home next to the sea. If you know anything about our site, which I actually strongly believe now, was because we've got 3 massive long barrows here, and I think that the big long barrows, which they lived on top of, male symbolism, was the centre of all the little long barrows around the coast. And I think that the Irish sites are all circular round at Newgrange, Noth and Dove, and you enter them inside kind of more female shape, whereas these long barrows, you don't enter the male organ, it's rubbed from the outside. So 3 massive long barrow hill forts that you're on top of would be more male symbolic, and Briganti's bridge house is like an elongation, which is more like a big long barrow. It's like a bridge shape, like the bridge out to the Crannogs, And we've actually got a home at Home Firth. It's called Home, and that's next to Elm, which is where one of them is. So and then the views are spectacular. And the thing is with Castle Hill, it is, in ancient terms, it is the cream of cream. There are more beautiful places generally in the countryside, like Cumbria in Scotland have got amazing countryside, but it's just a nice little place. It's a nice little valley. It's got the hill fort right in the middle, which is kind of like a long barrow, but it's more like a long barrow than a hill fort. Right in the middle, raised up, with the Pennines in the background behind it. It's so beautiful and majestic. And what I found is that everywhere where you can get a nice, decent view of it has been shut down and closed down. It's either mysteriously been bought or shut down, and visual access to it has been cut off. It's been we've been targeted with a crosshair for immigration, and then it's all urbanised, spread out, literally like Mordor with the smog and toxic fumes of Mordor, which like what Tolkien wrote about when he was up here studying and working with people in Huddersfield, that Hague guy. So and the fact that if there's a place that's beautiful and it's got a royal heritage and history of pre-culture and importance religiously and symbolically, I think that the current dominating force will be jealous about that if they didn't have it, unless they set up there. But if they set up there, they'd have to acknowledge its importance and significance. Now, planting a massive MLR transmitter and putting the Imperial Chemical Industries factory there is kind of exalting it in one way, but on the other hand, you're rubbishing it when you absolutely blitz it with buildings and urban sprawl and toxic smog, and put a done sign on the main headquarters. So it's next the home next to the sea, a beautiful sea, a nice view. It's like home next to the sea. There's actually nothing here, because it was flat and watery. And the thing is, all the ancient practices with the ancient sacraments and the really ancient plants and the ancient knowledge for whatever, if you want to go on a separate subject for that, right, is that, it's ripping out the roots of that culture and history and putting it upside down and plonking it in the sand, when it remember a salt marsh, as if you've beat, and now the latest culture has got the scientists in chemical labs, so they don't need the natural moors or the natural, oak orchards to get any of these, get the hands on any of these substances. Instead, when they get the exalted professors and wise ones who are now making the chemicals, actually synthesizing them in laboratories, God knows what they're making or what they're up to. They ain't just licking frogs. That's for sure. And what they're sending out to their celebrities and celebrities to give them all the confidence to, go on the TV and not be scared. So, who are all kneeling to them all. To me, it seems that. And then the other thing is symbolically in this area, but yet we get the massive sugar refinery, the massive Bury St Edmunds, bury him under a mountain of sugar, which now we know is really, really bad for his metabolism. It's almost like leave us to be, we're all addicted to these sweets and things like that. It's almost like, they're picking us off, we're all eating this, and then one by one, as metabolisms are falling and we're all going porky and we're getting picked off by whatever means necessary, and whether it's immigration or whether it's through the food that they're giving us. And now even bread's toxic if it's not the and it's in the name of it Warburtons, it feels like we've been left on that upturned tree to be picked off by, whatever comes around us. And there's a certain cover up around it, they try, cover it up as best they can, while they can get into a position. And that's where we're at now with Russell Brand, The Tories, they're trying to take, I don't really want to go too political, but it needs to be mentioned in relevance to it, which is we're actually being conquered and dominated again now, even further, Russell Brand's all over this on his channel. He actually does a bit of history and he does a little bit of religious stuff as well. He's got guests on, speakers from on his other channel as well, to do with psychedelics and history and things like that. So it seems that, to me, that they're wanting to divide the gap, humans here who were once, prestigious and honourable and certain powerful, it seems that I think they've been wanting to, take them out, by using devious means and strategies and symbolically rubbishing them. If you erase the history, then you've done a good job. And to be honest, all majority of the ancient cairns, there aren't that many in the middle of the country unless they did a good job of pulling them to bits. They're mainly around the coast. Wales around the coast, all the cairns and temples. Scotland all around the coast. Ireland mainly, some inland. But you see, our area inland is by direct river route anyway. There weren't that many over here, mainly, you've got Wellow and West Kennet and Stonehenge. But the thing with Stonehenge is that for biodiversity, the plains at Wiltshire don't have the actual biodiversity, but it's quite central on the south coast. So to me, it suggests that there might have been, people might have come over there, and it might have been a place to have some sort of school or college or induction sort of place for the whole wider culture, That's what I think. So I am very, very dubious about the fact that it was found near Sandringham. That's why. And the fact of, why would it have an upturned oak tree when they liked oak trees and celebrated them, and it whether or not people are hinting at that or not, whether people are hinting in favour of my opinion or not, I don't think that you should just be hinting in favour of it, no matter how controversial it is. I would like to see these tests because, as soon as I found out that you can't actually test metal for radiocarbon dating, then, it starts to get a bit silly, And all I want to know is this, right? I would like someone, right, but it's impossible to do it now because, you've got radio and whenever you're going to do something, the media know about it. Anything anyone does in this country, the media know about it straight away. And you can't kind of hide it. You can't have a control experiment, like a control blind experiment, because nothing's blind anymore. So anytime you're going to try and do an experiment to see what had happened, then they know about it straight away. So there's no privacy or secrecy in anything anymore, So it's almost like you can't... It's not possible to have a control blind experiment on this planet anymore because of technology. It's almost like, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, they've eliminated the possibility for there to be control blind experiments, But if we could do a control blind experiment, I would be interested to find out if, a expert chemical analysis team could forge such an installation, whether they do it 5 years before or 2 years before or whatever, and whether or not they can trick or fool another team into believing its date and its legitimacy, and then obviously you've got to remove it, and then so nobody can go back there and check it, I'd like to see if it's possible, if you can do it, and how easy it is to do. No one's doing that. Who's doing that? Who's saying, "Oh, can you make a Gun District Cauldron?" That people would believe is genuine, like a challenge, control blind, and then get an analysis team to try and check it. Oh, why would we want to do something like that? Well, what is the if you're not doing a proper job about it, then do it. We need to go next level analysis checking. Because for me, it's about reading the symbology. And I always think that, if there's something kind of suspicious or something not quite right, then usually, it usually gives you reason to suspect, you know what I mean? If there wasn't something unusual about it, then there wouldn't be reason to suspect it. So, that's what I think, as Russell Brand says, but what do you think? Put your comments below. From all what's happened through history, it always seems to be that we always seem to get rubbish, and they're always wanting to make themselves look good, handing out the charity money, doing this, doing that, while, with one hand, and while the other hand, they're, implanting done signs straight on your heritage and infiltrating your Oh, let's not bring loads of, let's not, have a wave of immigration, and put, 2 people in every village in England, let's drop it all on one, spray, like, get the fire hose out, let's, get the fire hose out and spray it where the fire needs to be put out, home next to sea, the beautiful, majestic area shall not be beautiful anymore once we've, turned it into a complete, total Mordor, smog, toxic fumes and smoke, which, says a lot for London because it's an absolute bomb site, but that's meant to be progress culture. It's not culture for people who live in villages in, Winchcombe or Caerphilly or whatever, is it? And now they're saying it's harming the planet. They're actually having to restrict cars going in there because it's that smoggy. If you've got to restrict vehicles going in there because of the claimed reason that it's, environmental, then it can't be good for the environment. So it's not a good thing, is it, really? So that's my opinion of Seahenge, surrounding facts and circumstances. Obviously, I'm not an archaeologist. I'm not someone who has done chemical analysis or anything, but, who has? Maybe other people besides the people they've got testing it, So I'd be interested to find out. I'm more interested in now finding out how I want some sort of department to fix some forgeries, because why have you even got the word embezzling? What is that? It's in the dictionary. Is it? Who put it in? Did somebody make it up? Do we have to remove it from the dictionary because it's not authentic or legitimate? Oh no, it's an actual thing. Has anybody ever been prosecuted for it? Let's have a look. Oh yes, they have. Oh, so academics forging things and making things up. Unbelievable. It exists.